I need a real man. My ex cheated with my brother. Now he's jobless and she wants me back. The family disappointment. I always knew my place in the family. Jake was the golden child, the perfect son, the one who could do no wrong. He was everything my parents wanted: smart, ambitious, charismatic. He excelled in school, got accepted into a prestigious university, and landed a well-paying corporate job straight out of college. My parents praised him endlessly, holding him up as an example of what success looked like. And then there was me. I wasn't dumb. I just wasn't interested in the same things Jake was. School bored me. Sitting in classrooms, memorizing equations, and pretending to care about economics wasn't for me. What I loved, what truly made me happy, was creating things. Ever since I was a kid, I spent most of my time in the garage with my grandfather, learning how to fix cars, repair appliances, and build things from scratch. I loved working with my hands, taking something broken and turning it into something valuable again. My grandfather saw potential in me, always encouraging my ideas. But my parents? They thought it was a joke. "You'll never make a living playing with tools," my dad would say, shaking his head. "Why can't you be more like Jake?" my mom would sigh. It became the narrative of my life. Jake got everything. A brand new car at 16, a fully funded college education, job recommendations from my parents' network. He had every possible advantage handed to him on a silver platter. Me? I had to fight for every inch of progress I made. I worked part-time jobs just to afford basic things. When I turned 16, I had to buy my own car, a rusted piece of junk that barely ran. While Jake was out partying with friends, I was taking night classes at a trade school while working during the day. Whenever I brought up my dream of starting my own business, my parents dismissed it immediately. "You need to be realistic," my dad would scoff. "Maybe Jake can get you a job at his company," my mom would suggest. "You're wasting your time," Jake would add with a smirk. It didn't matter how hard I worked. In their eyes, I was always going to be the failure, the dinner that changed everything. The worst moment came during a family dinner. At this point, I had been working on a new project for months, a prototype for a home automation system that I had designed from scratch. It was something I believed could become a real business. I decided to share my excitement with my family. I should have known better. I waited until a lull in the conversation and then said, "I finally finished the prototype I've been working on." My dad barely looked up from his plate. "Prototype? It's a home automation system. It can control lights, security, and even appliances remotely. I built it myself," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a long pause. Then, Jake burst out laughing. "You built what? A glorified light switch?" he snorted. My stomach tightened. "It's a little more advanced than that," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I've been testing it for months. I already have people interested in buying." "Oh, sure," he interrupted, rolling his eyes. "I'm sure investors are just lining up to throw money at you." My dad shook his head. "Son, you need to stop playing around with this. It's not a real career." My mom sighed. "Jake's company is hiring. Maybe you could apply." And then, the final betrayal. Emily, my girlfriend of 4 years, the woman I thought I was going to marry, laughed along with them. "He's just going through a phase," she said, shaking her head. "He'll grow out of it eventually." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I looked around the table. They were all laughing at me. Not one of them believed in me. Not my parents. Not my brother. Not even Emily. Something inside me snapped. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I came to a realization. They were never going to respect me. It didn't matter how hard I worked. It didn't matter what I accomplished. They had already decided that I was a failure, and nothing I did was going to change that. So I stopped trying. I wasn't going to argue with them anymore. I wasn't going to beg for their approval. I was going to prove them wrong. The betrayal that pushed me over the edge. The next few months, I threw myself into my work. I stopped wasting time trying to convince my family that I was serious. Instead, I focused on building my business. I worked late nights, saved every dollar I could, and perfected my designs. Then, one night, I got the final confirmation that I had made the right choice in cutting them off. Emily had been acting distant for weeks, always on her phone, always finding excuses to stay out late. Something felt off. So, I did something I had never done before. I checked her phone, and there it was. Messages from Jake. I felt physically sick as I read through them. "Jake, he still thinks you're going to stay with him?" "Emily, I feel bad, but he's just going nowhere. You know? Jake, he's pathetic. You deserve someone successful." "Emily, I know. I'm just waiting for the right time to end things. They had been sleeping together for months. My own brother, the golden child, the perfect son. He took everything from me. And the worst part? No one cared. When I confronted Emily, she didn't even deny it. I mean, come on, Ethan, she said, rolling her eyes. Did you really think I'd wait around forever while you played with your little gadgets? When I confronted Jake, he just smirked. Maybe if you weren't such a loser, she wouldn't have gotten bored. I snapped. I punched him in the face. My dad grabbed me, shoving me back. Enough. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? I shouted. He slept with my girlfriend. My mom crossed her arms. Emily made her own choices. And honestly, Ethan, maybe she just needed a real man. That was it. I looked around the room, at the people who were supposed to be my family. They didn't just betray me. They never cared about me in the first place, leaving them behind. That night, I packed my bags and walked out of their lives. I cut off everyone. Jake, Emily, my parents, all of them. I had nothing left to lose. But that also meant I had nothing holding me back anymore. And that was the moment everything changed. The rise from the ashes. Walking out of that house should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt like I was stepping into a void. I had no home, no money, no support. For the first time in my life, I was completely alone. And I had two choices: break down or build something better. I chose the second option, surviving on nothing. The first few months were brutal. I had enough money saved to rent a tiny, rundown studio in a rough part of town. It wasn't much, just a mattress on the floor, a second-hand desk, and a small kitchenette, but it was mine. With no stable income, I took any job I could get. I fixed broken appliances. I repaired computers. I even worked overnight shifts at a warehouse just to afford food and rent. But at night, when the world was quiet, that's when I worked on my real project. My home automation system, the same idea my family laughed at, became my obsession. I spent every spare second refining it, improving the software, making it sleeker, smarter, and more efficient. I taught myself everything I didn't know: marketing, coding, product design. I had no investors, no funding, no help, just sheer determination and the knowledge that I had nothing left to lose. My first breakthrough. After 6 months, I had my first real product. A smart security system that could be controlled entirely from a phone. Customizable, affordable, and unlike anything else on the market. I listed it online, hoping for just one sale. Then, I waited. 1 day, 2 days, a week. Nothing. Doubt started creeping in. Maybe my family was right. Maybe I was wasting my time. But then, a notification. Someone had bought it. My first customer. I packaged it up, shipped it out, and told myself not to get my hopes up. Then came another sale, and another, and suddenly, I was sold out, turning a side hustle into an empire. I used every dollar I made to improve my product. I reinvested into better materials, upgraded my production process, and started taking custom requests from clients. Demand exploded. Within a year, I quit all my side jobs and focused entirely on my business. Within 2 years, I had an actual office, a small team, partnerships with security companies. By year 3, I was running a 7-figure company, and my family, they had no idea. Meanwhile, their perfect lives were falling apart. I hadn't spoken to them in years. But one day, while scrolling online, I saw a post from an old mutual friend. It was about Jake. He had lost everything. Apparently, after his company discovered his office affair, they fired him. His perfect 6-figure job? Gone. His reputation? Destroyed. His connections? Vanished. And Emily? She left him immediately. The same way she had ditched me when I was struggling. She had traded me for success. And now? She had nothing. I should have been satisfied. But I wasn't done yet. Because my family still thought I was a nobody. And I wanted them to see exactly who I had become. Their first desperate attempt to reach me. It started with a text from my mother. "Ethan, it's been so long. We miss you. How have you been?" I ignored it. 2 days later, my dad tried. "Son, let's talk." Ignored. Then Jake. "Hey man, listen, I know things got rough between us, but can we talk?" I almost laughed. He really thought he could just act like nothing happened. I ignored him too, but they weren't done yet. Because the next week, my mother showed up at my office. The ultimate power shift. I was in a meeting when my assistant knocked on the door. Ethan, there's a woman outside. She says she's your mother." I sighed. I could have sent her away, but instead, I let her in. She walked in with fake warmth, acting as if nothing had ever happened. "Oh, sweetheart, look at this place. I'm so proud of you." I leaned back in my chair. "Funny," I said, "because the last time we spoke, you said I was wasting my life." She flinched. "Ethan, honey, we were just trying to help you. We didn't know. You didn't care," I interrupted. She went silent. And then, finally, she got to the real reason she was there. "Ethan, things have been hard for us. Jake is struggling, and your father's retirement didn't go as planned. We were hoping," she hesitated, "maybe you could help out. You know, for the family." I stared at her. Then I smiled. "You mean like how you helped me when I was struggling?" She swallowed hard. "Sweetheart, that was different." "No," I said. "It wasn't." And then I stood up. "This meeting is over. Ethan, please." I walked past her. For years, I had been the family disappointment. Now, they were the ones begging me. And I had nothing left to say. The ultimate betrayal deserves the ultimate revenge. I should have felt satisfied after my mother walked out of my office. For years, she and the rest of my family had treated me like I was nothing, a joke, a failure, someone destined to struggle for the rest of my life. Now, they were desperate, hoping I'd be their savior. But I wasn't finished. Not yet, because there was still one person missing, Emily. And as if fate had been waiting for the perfect moment, she reached out just a few days later. The pathetic return of my ex. It started with a message. "Hey, Ethan, I know it's been a while. Can we talk?" I stared at my phone, almost laughing. She didn't know that I knew. She didn't know that I had already heard about Jake losing his job, that the golden boy was now broke, drowning in debt, and barely scraping by, that she had left me for him, only to watch her better option crash and burn. And now, she wanted to talk. I ignored her. Then came another message. "Please, Ethan, just give me a chance to explain." Explain what? That she thought I was a loser when I was broke? That she had laughed at me when I walked away with nothing? That she had thought I'd be nothing without her? I let her stew for a full week before finally responding. "Sure, let's talk. Meet me at the Grand Oak on Friday at 7 p.m. The Grand Oak, a high-end restaurant, one that Emily had always wanted to go to, but that we could never afford when we were together. Now, it was nothing to me, and I wanted her to see exactly how much I had changed. Revenge never tasted so sweet. I arrived 10 minutes early, taking a seat at a prime table near the window. Emily showed up right on time, and the moment she saw me, I watched her entire demeanor shift. Her eyes flicked over my expensive tailored suit, the luxury watch on my wrist, the calm confidence I carried, a stark contrast to the man she had abandoned. "Wow," she said, taking her seat. "You look different." I smirked. "Yeah, a lot's changed." She looked nervous. This wasn't the Ethan she had walked all over. This wasn't the man she had left behind. This was someone she no longer had control over. The waiter arrived, and I ordered the most expensive bottle of wine on the menu without hesitation. Emily blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Oh, I'll just have water," she muttered. We made small talk while we ate. Or rather, she fumbled through small talk while I watched her squirm. She kept stealing glances at me, clearly struggling to process how much I had changed. Finally, she set down her fork and took a deep breath. "Ethan, I want to say I'm sorry," she said, her voice soft. "I was selfish. I didn't see what I had, and leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life." I stayed silent, letting her continue. "I miss you," she whispered. "I miss us. I was hoping maybe we could start over." I stared at her. For a moment, I almost wanted to play along, to make her think she had a chance. But she didn't deserve that. She didn't deserve anything from me. So I leaned back in my chair, smirking. "That's funny," I said, "because I don't miss you at all." Her face dropped. "What?" she breathed. I picked up my wine glass, swirling the liquid inside. "You thought I'd just take you back?" I asked, amused. "After everything?" She swallowed hard. "I thought. You thought I was still the same desperate guy you left behind." I finished for her. She flinched. "I've moved on, Emily," I said, setting my glass down. "And honestly, seeing you now, I don't even know what I ever saw in you." Her mouth opened and closed, at a complete loss for words. I grabbed my wallet, pulled out a few $100 bills, and set them on the table. "This should cover your meal," I said, standing up. "Good luck with whatever it is you do now." And with that, I walked out. I didn't look back, because I knew that for the rest of her life, she would. The final blow. I thought that was the end of it. But a few days later, I got one last text. You really just walked past me like I was nothing? I smiled to myself. Because that's exactly what she was to me now. Nothing. The family's final desperate attempt. After Emily, I figured I was done with the past. But then, a week later, Jake reached out. Hey man, look, I know I messed up, but I need your help. I laughed. I didn't respond. Then came another message. Mom and Dad are struggling. They need money. I need money. Come on, man. We're family. Family. Now he wanted to talk about family. The same family that had treated me like garbage. The same brother who had slept with my girlfriend and laughed in my face. I didn't even think twice. Not my problem. And then, I blocked his number. The ultimate freedom. For years, I had been chasing their approval. For years, I had let their words define me. But now I was free. I had built everything they told me I never would. I had become everything they swore I couldn't be. And they had lost everything. And I didn't have to lift a single finger. They destroyed themselves. And that was the best revenge of all. The final nail in the coffin. For the first time in my life, I had the upper hand. Emily had begged me to take her back. Jake had come crawling for money. My parents had finally realized they needed me more than I ever needed them. But I wasn't done yet. Because they still thought that if they pushed hard enough, I'd give in. They were wrong. The family's final guilt trip. A few days after I blocked Jake's number, I got a call from my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then came another call. Then another. Finally, I picked up. She immediately launched into a sob story. Ethan, sweetheart, why won't you talk to us? She asked, her voice shaking. Because I have nothing to say, I replied flatly. Please, she begged. Your father and I, we're struggling. Jake is struggling. We just need a little help. Nothing too much. Just to get us back on our feet. I clenched my jaw. Mom, I said slowly. Where was this family support when I needed it? She hesitated. Ethan, we were just trying to guide you. No, I cut her off. You were trying to break me. She sniffled. Sweetheart, we're your family. That means something, doesn't it? I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. No, I said simply. She gasped. I continued, refusing to let her interrupt. You treated me like I was worthless. You laughed at me. You told me I'd never amount to anything. And now, because you need money, you suddenly remember I exist? I heard my dad's voice in the background. We raised you, he snapped. We gave you everything. I laughed. You gave Jake everything. I corrected. You gave me nothing. And now you expect me to save you. Don't be like this, my mother pleaded. But I was done. No, I said firmly. You made your choices. Now you get to live with them. And with that, I hung up. I blocked both of their numbers. And for the first time in years, I felt completely free. Their last, desperate attempt. I should have known they wouldn't stop. Because a week later, they showed up at my office. I was in the middle of a meeting when my assistant knocked on the door. Sir, there's a man and woman outside. They say they're your parents. I sighed. Tell them I'm busy. A few minutes later, she came back. They won't leave. I clenched my jaw. Fine. I wanted to end this once and for all. I walked out into the reception area, keeping my face blank. They stood up immediately. My mother looked rough, her hair unkempt, her eyes puffy like she'd been crying. My father looked angry. They had never looked so small to me before. What do you want? I asked. My mother rushed forward and grabbed my arm. Ethan, please, she begged. Just talk to us. I pulled my arm away. We already talked. Not like this, she insisted. Face to face. We need you, Ethan. We just need a little money too. To fix your mistakes? I interrupted. She flinched. I turned to my father. You used to tell me that life wasn't fair, I said. That I had to work for everything. That no one was going to hand me success. He clenched his jaw. That's different. I smirked. No, it's not. I crossed my arms. I built this company from nothing. While you were laughing at me, while Jake was stabbing me in the back, I was working. I earned every dollar I have. And now, you want me to hand it over? We're your parents, my mother said weakly. We love you. I tilted my head. Did you love me when you ignored me at family dinners? I asked. Did you love me when you laughed in my face? When you told me I was wasting my life? When you treated me like I was nothing? Tears filled her eyes. We made mistakes, she whispered. I shook my head. No, you made choices. I took a step back. And now, I'm making mine. I gestured toward the door. Get out. They froze. Ethan, please. Get out. They stared at me, shocked. But I didn't care. I turned around and walked back into my office. And this time, they didn't follow. The final message. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from my father. I hesitated. Then, curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. Ethan, you've made your decision. I hope you can live with it. But one day, you'll regret turning your back on your family. And when that day comes, we won't be here. I stared at the words, waiting to feel something. Regret? Guilt? Sadness? Nothing. I crumpled up the letter and tossed it in the trash. Then, I moved on. A future without them. My business kept growing. I expanded into multiple locations. I hired an entire team. I became everything they swore I couldn't be. And my family, they faded into nothing. I don't know where they are now. I don't care. Because for years, I fought for their approval. And now, I finally understood something. I never needed it to begin with. The best revenge is moving on. For years, I had chased their approval. For years, I had let their words define me. But now I was free. Not just from their expectations, not just from their mockery, but from the weight of trying to prove myself to people who never truly cared. I had built everything they swore I never would. And they had nothing. But the thing is, I didn't need revenge, because they destroyed themselves. And I was too busy building something greater. Life without them. After throwing away my father's letter, I expected a wave of guilt to hit me. But it never came. I woke up the next day without a single thought about them. And the day after that, the same. The silence that used to feel lonely now felt peaceful. I no longer checked my phone, wondering if they had finally accepted me. I no longer looked at my success and wished they were proud of me. I simply lived. And I thrived. My business reaches the next level. With them out of my life, I had nothing holding me back. So I expanded. I launched a new product line, expanding into different areas of home automation. I partnered with luxury brands, turning my startup into a household name. I secured investors, growing my business into something even bigger than I had imagined. And within a few years, my company was worth 8 figures. I bought a beautiful home, not to prove anything, but because I wanted it. I traveled to places I had only dreamed of visiting. I met people who actually believed in me. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who saw my worth, who didn't need me to prove it to them. And that was the best feeling in the world. The one person who always believed in me. One day, while reviewing business contracts, I came across a familiar name, Mr. Reynolds. He had been one of my mentors when I was first starting out, an old family friend who used to tinker with electronics and teach me about circuits. He had always encouraged me, even when my own family hadn't. I remembered him saying, "Ethan, don't listen to people who can't see your vision. Build it anyway." I decided to look him up. Turns out, he had retired, but things hadn't been easy for him. His small repair shop, the one he had owned for decades, had shut down. And now, he was living in a tiny apartment, barely getting by. That didn't sit right with me. So, I called him up. "Mr. Reynolds," I said when he answered. He sounded surprised. "Ethan? Wow, I haven't heard from you in years. How have you been?" I smiled. "Better than ever," I told him. "And I've got an offer for you." Paying it forward. I flew out to see him a week later. We met at a small diner, the kind of place that hadn't changed in decades. He looked older, but his eyes still had that sharp intelligence. "So," he said, sipping his coffee. "What's this about?" I leaned forward. "You helped me when no one else did," I said honestly. "Now, I want to return the favor." I slid a contract across the table. "I'm hiring you as a consultant for my company," I said. "Flexible hours, full benefits, and a salary that'll make sure you never have to worry about money again." He blinked, completely stunned. "Ethan, this is too much," he stammered. "I can't." I cut him off. "You can," I said. "And you will." He stared at the contract for a long moment. Then, his hands shook as he picked up the pen. "I don't know what to say," he whispered. "Say yes," I grinned. And he did, because this was what real loyalty looked like. Not the fake, conditional family loyalty my parents had tried to guilt me into. Not the manipulative love that only existed when I was useful to them. This was genuine, and for the first time, I felt truly at peace. The final message from my past. Months passed. I forgot about my family. I focused on my business, on the people who actually mattered. But one day, while clearing out old emails, I saw a familiar name. Jake. I hesitated. Then, Curiosity got the best of me. I opened it. It was short. Mom and Dad lost the house. They're living in a small rental now. Thought you'd want to know. That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they had done. Just a pathetic attempt to get me to care. I stared at the email for a long moment. Then, I deleted it. No response. No reaction. No second chances. Because they didn't deserve one. A life they can't touch. That was the last time I ever heard from them. Years passed. My company became a leader in the industry. I met people who genuinely supported me. I built a life I loved. And my family. They faded into irrelevance. I don't know where they are now. I don't care. Because they spent years making me feel like I was nothing. And now, they were nothing to me. Not out of hatred. Not out of spite. But because I simply didn't need them anymore. They had chosen to treat me like a failure. And I had chosen to prove them wrong. Not for them. Not for revenge. But for me. And that was the greatest victory of all.